Hey guys, my name is Ryan. We're back again with another Spirit Island video. Today, we're going to be reading and reacting to the beginning of an article series that has, is still in the process of coming out. We're going to be covering the first 5 articles, and I think this is just a really fun, interesting series that I hope you guys also enjoy. So what do we got here? Well, this guy, Jonathan Webb, was given access to game logs by Handelabra. Handelabra is the company that makes the official Steam game for Spirit Island. That's the platform that myself and many of the other content creators use to record our games and upload them to YouTube. And so here he says that he has 2.27 million games over the course of just 3 months. The 3 months leading up to the release of the promo pack 2. That's the one that has Scotland, Finder, and Downpour. So we won't see any of that showing up in the data. But he picks those 3 months because at that time that has the full release of Jagged Earth, but of course does not yet have Promo Pack 2, and so it's a very stable period of time. There is no change in the content that exists over this period of time, and obviously 2 million log games is more than enough to start making some evaluations. So all the links are going to be in the description, so you can read along with this. This is going to be a ton of numbers. And I'm not going to spend too much time on any one particular chart or any one particular data set because there is a lot to look at, there's a lot to go over, and I encourage you to go through in your own time, really sink your teeth into it, and draw whatever conclusions you can. But anyways, without further ado, this first article is what setups do players prefer? And so we can see one of the things he looks at is practice modes. This is like unlimited undo, extra start of the game growth, no blight card, and skip the initial invader actions. These are different ways that you can have a negative difficulty modifier to your game. And 87% of the games have no practice mode. Of all the practice modes, the most popular is the unlimited undo. And that makes sense to me because if you're just chilling, you're just relaxing, you would hate for a misclick in order to ruin your whole game. There are pauses in the game whenever you're about to cross a line into something that you cannot undo. Whenever you're about to see a new explore card or an event card or a fear card. Something that, once you see it, you're stuck and you're committed to your decisions. But maybe you fat finger and you don't click the right spot to get the undo and fix your thing. And that might just ruin your gaming experience. So it makes sense to me that unlimited undo is a very popular one. Because, it's just not cool and it's not fun to get punished like that. But I don't use any of these practice modes, so that puts me in the 87%. I do think, by the way, as we go through this, there's no way to do this without just superimposing myself onto the data set and seeing where I fall within everything here. And I'm sure you guys are going to do the same. Games using events and tokens. I don't believe there's any way to disable tokens during your games. If you are playing with really any expansion besides Horizons, you're gonna have tokens. Now you can disable events before you start a game that I don't believe has any difficulty modifiers or like legitimacy modifiers. I'm pretty sure you can still get all of your like Steam awards and things like that without using the events. But as we can see, 77% of games use events and tokens. And about 10% of games, people disable tokens while still using, they disable the events while still using the tokens. And then 13% you have no and no. It makes sense that you can't have no tokens but use events. I mean, there is no way to disable it. But even if you could, it wouldn't make sense considering basically every single event references tokens in some way. The thing that I'm pulling out of this line here is that tells me that 13% of people, or at least 13% of the games played are on base game only, or base game and Horizons only. Now, I think that that's probably going to be more like 20, maybe 25%, maybe 50% of all the people that own Spirit Island don't own any expansions, but the people that play the game more and are individually putting more data into this set are going to own the expansions, right? After a while, you play the game, you like it, you feel like you've played all the spirits. There's only 8 spirits and 3 adversaries in the base game, and you've worked your way through that. That's, 24 solo games, and you're like, okay, great, let's go more. I want more spirits. I want more adversaries. I just want more of this game. As we know, every expansion makes this game wider and, like multiplicatively increases the amount of setups that you can do. So it seems natural to me that people who play this game more are going to, own the expansions. All right, next we have scenarios. 89% of games do not have a scenario. And I'm on the record saying I don't play very many scenarios. And it clearly shows that most people do not use scenarios. One other thing, I was talking just a second ago about not owning expansions. I also think we're going to see, and this is represented here in this data set too, is why I bring it up, is that the more recent expansions, I would reasonably expect to have less sales, right? I would assume that Branch and Claw has the most sales, and then, Jagged Earth has a little bit less, and then Nature Incarnate is going to have a little bit less, so on and so forth. Promo packs, the whole 9 yards. And if we take a look here, 3 of the least popular scenarios is Elemental Invocation, Despicable Theft, and the Great River. And all 3 of those are released in Jagged Earth. And so I would expect, right, they have the fewest sales, and as we can see, they have some of the fewest plays. Absolute bottom is Rituals Destroying Flame, which I do find to be a very frustrating scenario. It feels very unplayable for a lot of spirits, and so it makes sense to me that it falls all the way to the bottom. But I do have to wonder going forwards if this data could be skewed because of the expansion in which whatever reference component comes from. Games using an adversary. So this has every adversary difficulty. Remember, this does not have Scotland in it, so it just has the first 6. And we can see that the most popular difficulty is actually adversary level 6. And I think this makes sense that the people who play the most games are naturally, over time, just going to get better as they play more and more and more times. And the more you play, you're going to just naturally grow in your abilities. And then, well, you get capped. You can't go any higher than a, level 6 adversary. So the most dedicated people that are the best at the game are playing the most number of games. They inject the most amount of data into the set, and therefore we wind up with 20% of games played on adversary level 6. The single most popular game is, it looks like, England 6, with 16,000 games, followed by France 6 at 15.5, then Prussia 6 at 15 flat. Very, very cool things to look at here. All the other difficulties from adversary level 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, and 4 are pretty much all the same. 5 has the biggest drop off, and then 6, once again, is the most popular. And I think the same reason why 6 is the most popular is probably why 5 is the least popular. Like, if you put yourself just one tick below max difficulty and you get a win, you're like, all right, don't need to do that again. I don't think you're going to be playing a difficulty 5 over and over and over and over again. As soon as you hit that level 5, you're like, gosh, I'm like one tick below, peak difficulty. I can do this. I believe in myself. And then you push yourself to that next level. I think you're also going to get a lot of games at difficulty 6, because if you do lose, you're like, let's run it back. I got to get this win. I believe in myself. I was just watching this video the other day that showed in the research of people like video game difficulty, people would rather quit the game than lower their difficulty that they play at, which is very interesting to me. So as soon as you commit yourself to playing as level 6s, that tells me that you'd rather just quit as opposed to going back down to 5. Whereas if you're floating in that 1, 2, 3, 4 range, you might go back and forth because you're not so emotionally committed to doing peak difficulty. But maybe I'm just projecting. And now we have just a matrix of different scenarios and adversaries. What's the most popular setup? And having no scenario with adversaries is the most popular, with 57% of games played in that way. And the most popular adversary scenario combination specifically is Guard the Isle's Heart against England. And this is easily the hardest to play Guard the Isle's Heart, because that's the one that says you lose if you ever get a town into land number 8. And as we know, England makes it really hard to stop towns from building. Preventing towns from building and making a pocket is incredibly challenging against England. So I wonder how much of this is like frustration games where you're like, I can't believe I freaking lost to England. Gotta run it back and win. Or how much of this is, grassroots. Double adversary games. As we can see, 96% of games are not double adversary. And then all the rest of them, no single adversary is more than 1% represented as a supporting adversary. Double adversary is not very popular, and it is a very difficult way to play because the amount of rules overhead just expands rapidly. It can be very difficult to keep track of the 7-8 rules that are involved in an adversary, right? Like difficulties 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the loss condition, plus the escalation is a ton to keep track of. Adding an additional other adversary to it, that rules overhead, that complexity can be way too much, and I almost never do double adversary anyways, so that makes sense to me. This chart compares all the different combinations of double adversaries though. The most popular double adversary is Prussia leading and England supporting. Pretty tough pairing because England wants you to do a really long game, and Prussia forces a really short game, so you have opposite pressures, and it's very, very challenging. Coming down here to the double adversaries by level, we see the most popular way to do double adversary is 6-6. And so that supports the idea that, the people that are crazy enough to do double adversary are just going to go freaking all the way and really max that sucker out and go all the way to 6-6. Interestingly enough, the second most popular way is 0-0, just playing double base level. So only escalations, only loss conditions of two different adversaries. It's funny how life can be bipolar like that. Extra boards. 99% of the time, we don't got one. No one uses them. Thematic boards. Only 4% of the time. Still no one uses them. It's cool that we have all these different sandboxy ways to build out your games, but the data shows it's really not that popular. All right, coming out to article number 2. What spirit count and difficulty do players prefer? So we've already seen, those difficulty 6s is the most popular way to go. So I think we can immediately assume that difficulties 10, 11 for those adversaries, and 8 for Sweden is probably going to be the most popular difficulties. But let's see how it plays out. I would expect difficulty 8 to be pretty popular as well, because that's going to pick up some level 4s and level 5s of other adversaries in addition to that Sweden 6. Let's see. One spirit games make up 73% of games played. That makes sense to me. So what's kind of funny is originally when Spirit Island was designed, it was for 2 to 4 players. And because the game scales linearly and everything is proportional at every player count, you can naturally go up to 5 to 6. There was that 68, 144 player games on the Discord that were just wild. But you could also go down. And you can go down to just a single player game. And as I understand the story, the game wasn't designed for single player, but they kind of retroactively put a couple rules in there like, hey, target another spirit can out target yourself. Go ahead, play single player. And, it was never intended originally to be just a solo game. And now it's the most popular solo game on the market. So hey, who knows, right? You never know who you're really designing games for. But at least that's the story I've been told, that by accident it became the most popular game for a genre it was not originally, or a target market it was not designed for. So games by number of spirits and players. This is splitting out between solo and multiplayer. If you did not know, on Handelabra, you can go for an online multiplayer experience. You can connect with your friends, or there is an open market. You can just put yourself out into a matchmaking. I don't think that matchmaking is particularly popular. Or at least every time that I've ever tried to pair up with someone random, I've literally never found a pair. But just connecting with your friends, chit-chatting on Discord, or calling each other on the phone, or whatever means you choose to use while playing is quite popular. Now, if we take a look, it says that 91% of games are done on a single computer. So even if multiple spirits are being played, it's all on one PC. Kind of like when I do 2 spirit content, it's just, me by myself recording on just my computer, that would show up here in the solo two-spirit section, or, 1/8, 12.5% of all games played. Still, we see that 73% is solo single player, but 8% of games are done using that online multiplayer. Now, this chart takes the difficulty compared to the number of spirits, and this goes all the way down to difficulty 28. I have no clue how you would ever get to difficulty 28, but apparently 8 times people figured out how. There's 8 reps at that difficulty, which is crazy. The ones that I would expect to be most popular would be the 8, 10, and 11, just based on the popularity of those level 6 adversaries. And as we can see, difficulty 0 is the most popular, but second most popular would be that difficulty 10. That would be, your France 6, Prussia 6, Habsburg 6, whichever one I'm missing in there. Actually, no, I'm not missing any, because England and Russia are both difficulty 11, and then Sweden's difficulty 8. With difficulty 11, that seems to be the next most popular at 18k. Oh, no, 2 spirits at 0 difficulty is 19k, but 1 spirit at difficulty 11 is 18k, so that comes in at 4th place. Difficulty 8 is not the most popular. There are several more popular than difficulty 8. Very interesting to me. Obviously, once you get down to like 12 and up, there is the only way to get there is like 6 plus a scenario, which as we know is unpopular, or double adversary, which as we know is unpopular. So the numbers immediately fall off to basically nothing as soon as you get to difficulty 12. I believe there's an achievement for getting a victory at difficulty 17, so it is kind of cool to see a little spike at that specific difficulty, just as people are trying to go achievement hunting. There is one for difficulty 25, which I've still never done, but there's once again a little spike right there at difficulty 25, as people are definitely achievement hunting. Games logged by player bracket. So all the data is just based on quantity of games played. It does not care about how many people are doing things. And this one shows how many games are represented by how many people. And there are 4 people that in this 3-month period logged over 1,000 games played. So gosh, that's got to be 10 games a day or something for 3 months straight. I am definitely not one of those 4 people. Those 4 people played 4,600 games. That's about, 1,150 games each. Just crazy numbers that people are putting out. Looks like 670 people played more than 100 but less than 1,000 games. And then 5,600 people had more than 10 but less than 100. I think that's where I would probably sit. Playing, on average 1 game a day would put you at, 90 games. So I would reasonably expect I missed a few days here and there. I guess it comes down to the exact dates that these things happened. I guess I'd have to run back and check that, but I would guess that I would probably fall into the 10 to 100 range, that 5,600 players. But the 2 to 10 games is overwhelmingly the biggest at 9,000 people. 9,000 individuals played 2 to 10 games over the course of those months. I think this is important, at least for me as a content creator, to think about how many games like you guys, my audience, are playing. And who am I talking to when I'm making content? Because the way that I can assume that certain people would know certain things is important, right? Should I assume that you know A, B, and C because you're one of these 1,000 game players? Or should I assume that I need to talk through things in more detail? And this suggests to me that I should do a lot more talking and be more granular and more detailed in what I'm doing and thinking, as opposed to just going like, yep, yeah, and we do this, yup. If that's true, I would definitely appreciate that feedback if I'm not talkative enough, because I do want to try and provide a little educational value in addition to, the spectacle of watching a game happen. I'd hope that I can produce some amount of value through my gameplay content. Okay, and then these last couple charts just takes all the aforementioned data and just kind of reorganizes it in a couple different ways. Proposes difficulty brackets, so like the very low difficulty people making up about 1/3 of players that only play at difficulty 0. Low difficulty doing 1 to 3, moderate at 4 to 7, high 4 to 12, and very high at 13 plus. Breaking it all down is just different ways of conceptualizing what difficulties people play at. That would put me primarily at the high, right? That Sweden 6 up to like England 6, maybe a double adversary to push up a little bit higher. That's generally where I sit at. I don't know, just something an interesting little thought process of breaking down individuals. All right, going ahead to article number 3. What spirits do players prefer? What are the most popular spirits? And we just get right into it here. Most frequently played spirits by number of spirits in the game. And the most popular spirit overall is Keeper of the Forbidden Wild, with 34,000 games played. It's the most popular solo spirit, but actually is not the most popular in any other category. River is the most popular for 2, 4, and 6 player games. And then it looks like Ocean's Hungry Grasp is most popular at 3 players, or is the most popular 3-player spirit, barely edging out River by less than 50 more games played, but Ocean's Hungry Grasp is the most popular. And then Rampant Green is the most popular 5 spirit. It's kind of interesting when you take a look at this. You would reasonably expect that, as you get to higher player counts, we know that there's just less games played. And so you'd reasonably expect that there would just be less games played every time that you decrease the number of players. But every once in a while, that's not the case. And a really funny one, as I'm looking at this, is a spread of Rampant Green. There's actually more games played with green at 2 spirits than there is at 1 spirit. And I think we all know why. Gift of Proliferation is pretty cheeks in solo, but it is amazing in 2 spirits. We all love to be the second spirit in a green game, right? We love just getting totally OP, just busted, running over everything and smashing the board up. So that's a really fun moment to identify. I would suspect there is very few, if any more, where it literally goes up as you decrease the player count. Maybe, Fractured Days doesn't. That's another one that's, hella support. I don't see any others, but that is a very fun one to identify. Actually, hold on. Pretty much every single spirit has more games played in a 6-spirit game than is in a 5-spirit game. As I'm looking down this, I think like every single one actually goes up. That's fascinating. That's really funny. It's like, hey, if you're going to do 5 spirits, you might as well just go all the way. And of course, every time you add an additional spirit to the game, you're consuming a greater percentage of the spirits in the pool. And so it's just more likely that every spirit would get a rep. But it is funny how completely universal that is. Now we have most frequently played aspects and breaking down by percentage as well. So we can see that base Lightning is played in 70% of Lightning's game. Pandemonium has 18% and Wind has 14. Wind is certainly a very challenging one to play just because if you're so used to every other version of Lightning where just everything becomes fast and is totally free and easy, going to Wind is a really tricky transition. You have to completely change your mental model since now you only get 1 fast power a turn as opposed to as many as you want. Let's see. 16% of River games are with Sunshine? That is crazy because Sunshine is absolute cheeks as a spirit. That is shocking to me that there's 5,000 games played for Sunshine River. 15% of games for Resilience Earth. I think Resilience is better than base. I have no data to back that up. We're probably going to get data through this, but it just feels to me like, the 3 defend just doesn't do enough. And so sure, you don't protect your Dahan with Resilience, but at least you get to protect the land and you can draft into things more effectively. So I would actually have expected that Resilience would have been a higher percentage just because it does feel a little bit smoother to me to play. For Shadows, here's a funny thing. We got Base, Madness, and Reach. And there's only one single game played as Amorphous, because Amorphous comes out in Promo Pack 2, which is not included in this data set, but somehow, some way, one single game managed to sneak into the data set. Maybe it was a dev that accidentally played a game and it got logged, or who knows. but that's really funny. 20% madness, 18% reach. Any aspect of shadows is better than base shadows. Still looking forward to Darkfire coming out, hopefully right around the corner. But yeah, madness and reach, I'd rather play either of those anytime over base. Just straight buffs. Most frequently played spirits, so this takes the data that we just looked at and then sorts it by set, trying to consider sales. And we can see that the bottom is a ton of is primarily the two most recently released sets, Jagged Earth and Horizons, are the two most recently sold components on digital, at least as of the time of this data set. However, Starlight is the fourth most popular spirit, and that's also in Jagged Earth. Grinning Trickster is the sixth most popular, and that's also in Jagged Earth. So that does make an argument going against the idea of lower Jagged Earth sales, but all the base spirits are sitting up towards the top, Branching Claw being number one. I don't know. You can take that as you see fit. And then this once again takes it and trying to see if complexity or power level based on Red Revenge's tier list has any effect. And at least the way I'm reading it, there are a bunch of Bs and Cs and Ds down towards the bottom. However, you have two S tier spirits also way towards the bottom. So it's a mixed bag. You know, whatever you can choose to convince yourself is the truth. This chart is another way of just chopping up different justifications for why certain spirits are popular. This one takes a look at, your offense, control, fear, utility, defense charts that are on the backside of the spirit panels. This one charts out a few different ideas, different aggregates of numbers. I think data is really funny and interesting, right? Numbers, we love numbers, but we hate numbers at the same time. Just like as human beings, we always want to have the numbers for things, but then when we do get the numbers, we're never satisfied, because I think we as people want a story to justify the numbers. Just the numbers themselves never quite do it, right? I mean, every time you see like anything in the news or in sports or this, that, the other thing, seeing a number is cool, but then as soon as those numbers go up, everyone sees them, yep, sure, whatever, and then everyone just starts arguing about what do they mean? Why do these numbers exist? And, that's a whole exercise you can spend all day on. But it is kind of funny to me that the author here spent a significant chunk of the article trying to justify why more spirits are more or less popular than others. So naturally, I'd be curious to see what you guys think. Why do you guys think that certain spirits are more or less popular than others? Maybe some just feel more smooth to play? I mean, maybe, I guess there's already justifications for is it OP? But Keeper does feel just really smooth to play. You feel very strong very quickly, not too hard to execute. I don't know, maybe that's why. This next article is what adversaries are the most difficult. So we would reasonably expect that Russia and England would be the most difficult. They have the highest difficulty level. And actually this chart inspired me to make my own with all of them. So up on the screen, screenshot that if you will. But I wanted to save that for myself as just a quick reference chart. We can see here the win rate by adversary level. So when this is true as we would expect it, as you increase difficulty, you decrease win rate. Across the board, level 0 has an 86% win rate. Level 6 has 49% win rate, right? Makes a lot of sense. Difficulty should push down win rate. What's interesting is that difficulty 0, you only have the loss condition and the escalation. And the two hardest adversary level 0s are France and then England. Both of which make you lose when you add too much plastic to the board. Those 7 towns, I think the way that I've always seen new people play, I think the hardest thing for new players to grasp is pushing invaders to prevent builds. In the slow phase, pushing an explorer to deny next turn's build cycle is just a very challenging thing whenever I try and teach a brand new player some basic strategy. That one always is the hardest for that to be realized. That's why whenever I do a teaching game, I get so loud and I try really be like, whoa, isn't it crazy, man? You push an explorer and now there's no build and now there's no ravage. Sometimes it works. But yeah, it makes sense that France would cause so much trouble there. So this chart just takes a look at the difference in win rate, the marginal difference from level to level. So for example, going from Russia 0 up to Russia 1 gives you a 14% downward pressure on win rate. We go from a 90% win rate to a 76% win rate. So therefore, we have a negative 14% modifier here. And what's really interesting to me is that at some levels it goes up. In an old video, I talked about my white whale was trying to find adversaries that literally get easier when you push up the difficulty for certain spirits. You know, something like Trickster using the Incite Impersonate combo is literally easier against Sweden 3 than it is against Sweden 2, because when Sweden increases the damage of its buildings, it also increases the effectiveness of the Impersonate Incite combo. Now you get an extra town kill whenever you do Impersonate Incite on a city. But there are some specific levels where we actually have a positive modifier of win rate. So we got Russia 2 and Russia 4 are literally easier than Russia 1 and Russia 3, at least based on the data here. In fact, looking across the board, most of the level 4s are easier. Russia gets easier, England gets easier, France and Prussia all get easier at level 4 than they are at level 3. And I wonder why that is. I have to assume that there's a certain level of experience. Inexperienced players are going to play at lower difficulties, and more experienced players are going to go to higher difficulties. But that in between, I would reasonably expect that over the course of time, you're going to increase your difficulty level. So maybe once you learn how England works and you kind of figure out the pace of play, you're like, okay, I got level 3, no problem. You go up to level 4, and it doesn't change things too much. And you're like, you know what? I've already got this. I can win, and I can keep going. But on the other hand, England 5 is notorious. That's the one that gives you the extra HP. And so another way that I could argue for the positive win rate at England 4 is like, England 5 sucks, and I hate it. I could beat it, but I don't want to, and so I'm going to bump down my difficulty to increase my joy of the game. There is nearly 12% drop off in win rate going up to level 5, and similarly, Russia 5 is the biggest drop off. That's the Russia bombs. That's the one that really just pisses me off. You get punished for doing too much fear. It's like, really? Are you kidding me? And so that could be a reason why maybe Russia 4 is more popular, or at least has a higher win rate. Like, could play Russia 5. I'm capable of beating Russia 5, but it just pisses me off, and I don't want to. So I'm going to go back down to Russia 4. I don't know. I mean, with Prussia, right, there's a positive, but I don't know. Prussia is really smooth from level to level. You hardly feel the change until you get to, Prussia 6. That turn 1, stage 3, it does hit you really dramatically, but I don't know. It's hard to come up with the story. Now, this chart here takes a look at the win rate between solo and multi-spirit games, where if it's a positive number, it's easier in solo, and if it's a negative number, it's easier in multiplayer. I'm on the record saying that multiplayer games are easier, and this chart says so too. In almost every single difficulty level, every single adversary, it's easier to win, or you have a higher win rate in multi-spirit games. There are a couple specific ones that are better for solo, notably Russia 5 and 6. England 5 is the single biggest one, where 13% easier for solo than it is for multiplayer. England as a whole is 2% easier solo than multiplayer. But overall, multiplayer has a much better win rate. I have to imagine that at the top end of Russia and England, there are certain spirits that are just better than others into those adversaries. And so if you're playing the wrong spirit in a multiplayer game, you can drag the whole team down. Both Russia and England have ways where one single weak link in the chain can drag down the whole team, right? England needs one single land on the whole island to cause everyone to lose. And with Russia, if you start, you get 3 invaders or 3 explorers in a land. So ravages again the next turn, ravages again the next turn, start cascading all over the place. It's not even the loss condition, it's just the excessive amount of blight that exists sourcing from one single land, if you have one weak link, yeah, it could make it all fall apart. So I could justify that. Okay, this chops up data in different ways, different win rates based on different levels and different spirit counts. This one's very interesting to me. How do games end? Why do you lose and why do you win? Some standout ones is the adversary loss condition. Obviously, Prussia and Sweden don't have one, but the loss condition is the most punishing against France, then Habsburg, then England, and Russia has the least punishing loss condition. Okay, whereas when the blight pool runs out, that is most punishing against Russia. That makes sense. Kind of just as I explained, it just starts spiraling on itself. Sweden, I've always said that Sweden's loss condition is blighting out because you get the additional blight from Sweden 1, and that is the most popular way to lose. Prussia, I've always said that the Prussia loss condition is the invader deck running out, and that is 8% of games, which is not that much. So, yeah, it's way more likely that you blight out as opposed to deck out, but I guess I'm wrong there. But Habsburg loss condition, your Habsburg livestock colonies loss condition, can fully trigger off of one Ravage. Like, let's say you're in a solo game, right? And you're in a blighted land, and it's an 8 damage Ravage. It blights, that's an LC. Cascades, that's an LC. Bam, game over, you're done. So it's a really easy loss condition to fall backwards into. Because Habsburg just naturally is a 7 damage Ravage, right? You start with an empty land, explore, build a town, gather a town, adjacent town, that's 7 damage. There are a lot of events that can bump up the damage by 1. Tons of different ways, and that becomes a loss condition. So, yeah, you could just randomly lose to Habsburg for no reason at all. It's very frustrating. Now, on the other side, why do you win? Terror level 3 victories are the most common against Prussia and Sweden, right? Both of those adversaries are not resilient. Once you get control of the game and you're denying builds, you can just pick off a couple cities, bam, you're done. Whereas a terror level 4 that is a fear out victory is the most popular against England, right? Because they build so much, you could just never get all the buildings, and so you wind up just running through the whole fear deck every single time. Terror level 2, wow, that's the most common terror level 2 is against France, which is fascinating to me. I guess if you're already playing the game where you're denying builds, then there's just less fear on the table. That's kind of the thing with River Surges and Sunlight becomes a very low fear spirit just because you deny builds from happening. And so when you do get around to killing things, there's not things to kill. And there's just not fear sitting on the board for you to collect. And that's just, you wind up naturally getting a lot of Terror level 2, Terror level 3 victories simply by a lack of plastic to burn up. Now, over here on the right side, I should note this is all level 6 adversaries. So Terror level 1 victory against Russia at level 6 where you literally can't kill explorers is fascinating to me. But on the right side, this shows the win rate. And we can see the lowest win rate adversary is Habsburg at 38%. Then going up from there, we got England at 40, Russia at 45, France at 50, Prussia at 60, and then Sweden is the easiest, lowest difficulty at 62%. This chart compares the difference between solo and multiplayer ways that games end. Notable standouts is you're far more likely to blight out in a multiplayer game against Russia, right? Once again, the idea that one single player can just cascade again and again and again, right? That's consistent with our idea here. And a Terror level 2 victory is dramatically more likely when you're playing Russia solo as opposed to multiplayer. The Terror level 2 against Russia is like the gold standard of how you can get a Russia win because you only flip over one of the fear bombs, and it's very difficult to do. You have to be able to get complete board control without producing fear. Very few spirits can do it, and so it makes sense that, it's just easier in solo, right? If you're playing someone like a Keeper, playing, I was going to say Wounded Wilds, but that's not available in this data set. Let's just go with Keeper, right? Keeper is amazing at getting that Terror level 2 victory against Russia, but Keeper plus anyone else, no matter who you pair up with, they're just going to be worse at going for that strategy. All right, last article that we're going to be looking at today is article number 5. How does each spirit match up against each adversary? Now, we were talking before about, having to come up with a story and a justification for the data, and I betcha that this one is where you're going to start to get into a lot of arguments. Because it's one thing to say that you have a good matchup or a bad matchup, but then why and, all that can become pretty contentious. Sometimes you see on social media someone's like, oh, what spirit should I play into this matchup? And every comment has a different spirit in mind. Everyone has a different justification. Everyone's like, oh, this spirit's great. No, that spirit sucks. And so I'm very curious to see the data that we see here. Win percentages for no adversary games. Sure, true solo, lowest for wildfire, vital strength of the earth. For no adversary, makes sense. Just like fractured days, oceans, hungry grasp, just difficult spirits to execute. Wildfire is so easy to just like defeat yourself. If you don't know how to play the spirit, you just can't win. Very challenging spirit. Vital strength of the earth is just horrible at winning games. When I first started, I originally learned this game on the Handelabra app, and I played Vital Strength of the Earth just over and over and over again, and kept on losing by decking out, because I would just, skip everything, defend everything, remove all the blight, and then lose to a deck out without producing 2 fear cards. And I had to learn how to take on more risk, draft more majors, and then ultimately just play a different spirit before I started winning again. Now this chart is against level 6 adversaries, only looking at true solo. Highest win rate spirit is Many Minds Move as One with the 67% win rate, and the lowest is Vital Strength of the Earth at just a 16% win rate in solo. Holy yikes, that's bad. I don't know if this includes the aspects or not. Hopefully maybe we'll see win rates for aspects, but yeah, 16% win rate is bad. Vital Strength's best matchup seems to be Sweden with less than a 1-3 win rate. Woof. Oh man, that's a tough one. And then we got everything in between. Let's see, some standouts. Many Minds versus Sweden at 89% seems to be the highest in the game. Ocean's Hunger Grasp against Prussia is 87%. I do think I recall there was conversation about this one person that played, 1,000 games of Ocean versus Prussia. Just one single person played only that one matchup. And maybe that conversation, because this data came out in like September. So, and I'm, running 3-4 months behind. So maybe that's where, maybe that's what the win rate's from. And maybe where that conversation came from is all seeded based off of these articles and that data set. That's pretty funny. Overall, like as we said, Sweden's the easiest. Russia is the hardest across the board. Okay, once again, we have everything with multi-spirit. And assuming we get into multi-spirit, Fractured Days becomes the best spirit at a 60% win rate. What was theirs in solo? Let's see. Fractured Days, where are you? 42%. So going from 42% to 60% just by going into multiplayer as Fractured Days is a dramatic rise. I'm sure based on the others that we're about to see a marginal chart here to see which ones are better. This is across all, against all difficulties. Difference in win percentage between true solo and multi-spirit against level 6s. Okay, this one right here. So this is where we get the Fractured Days massive boost. Where is Fractured Days? Okay, Fractured Days is right here with a 17.8% higher win rate in multiplayer than he is in solo. And that's not even the highest. That's tied with Serpent. Okay, that makes sense. Shadows is almost 22% better in multiplayer. Probably just by the fact that, base Shadows is basically unplayable. Also, Vital Strength of the Earth is 17.6%, almost the same as Fractured Days. Then actually, River gets the biggest boost of multiplayer. That's fascinating. River is a very competent solo spirit. On the other hand, Stone's Unyielding Defiance does not like playing with others, at 12% better in solo than he is in multiplayer. Yeah, Stone offers nothing to anyone else. The only thing that he can do to help other people is growing into one of your lands to prevent it from, taking blight, protecting presence, all the normal things. but has nothing to do with your economy. And boosting up stone doesn't really change that much. I feel like stone is predominantly restricted just by the amount of presence he has on the board. Being able to do things with that presence is basically free. So like stone plus like a gift of proliferation, it's kind of the only way to make stone better. He's already just so OP. And yeah, individually, Stone versus Habsburg is the biggest differential, at least, in favor of solo, where Stone wins 30% more often in solo than he does in multiplayer against Habsburg. Makes sense, right? There is no spirit that is so much better. He is the Habsburg killer, right? Yeah, Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds, I was talking about that earlier. I thought he was just dramatically better as a Russia killer, and he's 26% better in solo than he is in multiplayer. Yeah, that tracks. On the other hand, 42%. Wow. Shadows against Prussia is 42% better in multiplayer than he is in solo. That's nuts, man. That is crazy. River is 37% better in solo. I mean, I guess with River, right, you're a low fear spirit, and so literally anybody will produce more fear than you. But man, that's crazy to me. Also, River is really good in multiplayer because your boon of Vigor just gives an absurd amount of energy. Pairing River with anyone just breaks the game open for that other spirit because they have so much additional energy. So maybe it's not that River's bad in solo, but he's just insane in multiplayer. That could track. Actually, let's check those numbers. River in solo is a 31.8% win rate overall. Huh. That's so much lower than I would expect. I guess there is the River versus England. And I do think that, when you have those like notoriously challenging matchups, you're like, oh, I want to try it again until I finally get a victory. And yeah, there's an 11.5% win rate against England. It actually made me realize I never checked lowest win rate. Heart of the Wildfire versus England, 2%. Okay, yeah, gosh, that's brutal. I've never even tried that matchup because I know it's not going to be good. And I don't even know if I have the willpower to record myself losing, 50 times to get that one win, for content. I do think this is a cool chart, though. I'm willing to bet, at least, selfishly, like what type of videos would people want to watch. Anything that has a low win rate would probably be a more popular video, so... Maybe this will be my guide to future content. Though, I hate playing Russia. I might have to. This next one talks about standard deviations of average win rate, and I'm going to be real, I never took statistics, and I don't understand what a standard deviation is, and I've had it explained to me, and I think it's like the average of an average, but I don't know how that turns into a percentage here. I don't know. Someone explain to me, what does this mean? I don't get it. It says it's not that simple, and yes, that is how I feel, so I'm going to move on really quickly before I BS my way through even pretending like I know what this could mean. And then here at the end of the article, we have calculated and adjusted ways of figuring out win rates. He's got his whole methodology in the article, so you can read through that if you'd like, but it has different adjustments to trying to find what is the true win rate in every single matchup. So yeah, you can sink your teeth into that if you want. Well, that's all the articles I want to cover today. The article series does continue. Articles 6, 7, and 8 are up right now, and that's a deep dive into Prussia, Sweden, and England. If you guys liked this overview of these articles, I think going into a deeper dive into each individual adversary will be really fun, so we can spend more time being more detailed and more specific, and have a little bit more of a nuanced conversation. So if you're interested in that, just let me know, and I'd be happy to review the next articles as well. Anyways, thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you all have a glorious day.